Hi everybody, my name is Rin Longmaid. I'm a restaurant broker and consultant at Santa Rosa Business and Commercial in beautiful Sonoma County, California, and I'm the founder and host of this series, Deep Dish Live, where we explore the business of restaurants for restaurateurs, restaurant buyers and sellers, and the restaurant curious. Welcome to episode 14. Can you believe that? Episode 14. It's been a year since we've been doing this series. Today I'm going to be discussing restaurant leases, restaurant commercial leases, how much rent is too much. And today we are live streaming from Brickmaiden Breads in downtown Point Reyes in Marin County, right on the Point Reyes Seashore, National Seashore. And I'm right next to the firebox of Brickmaiden. It's an artisan bakery where they wood bake all the bread, and this is the firebox on the outside. We're going to see the bake shop on the inside in a minute. But I want to talk about a few things first. This episode runs once monthly. Each episode is about 30 minutes long, and we discuss topics that are pertinent to restaurant buyers and sellers, restaurant operators. We take a deep dive. That's why it's called Deep Dish. And I have a small and mighty support team that helps me do this series. The woman who helped me conceive of it, or maybe she actually conceived of it, is Holly Hansen. She's joining us remotely. She's the principal at Holly Hansen Public Relations. Hi, Holly. She'll be running the live feed, posting things, or answering any questions if you have any. And then behind the camera is my friend Ed Troxel, who works so much magic around this series. I could not do it without him. He's a live media consultant for business marketing, and he has all kinds of things to offer you if you want to learn how to do it yourself. He has a course on that. If you needed him to come out and live stream with you like I do every month, he can do that. Hi, Ed.
Hey, thank you.
He'll jump in every once in a while if I make any mistakes. So I think that's enough. Let's invite Celine over. So today I'm joined by Celine Underwood. She's the founder and artisan baker of Brickmaiden Breads. She founded it 21 years ago.
Hi, Rin.
Hi, Celine. So one thing that distinguishes our visit here today at Brickmaiden is Brickmaiden is for sale. The business is for sale, and the real property that goes with it. So we're going to today be highlighting a little bit about what Brickmaiden has to offer as you, the consumer, but more than that, we're going to talk about this opportunity to be the next owner, operator, and artisan bakery of Brickmaiden Breads. So tell us a little bit about Brickmaiden.
Well, as you said, I started it 21 years ago when I was just a kid. And I started baking wood-fired bread in a brick oven, an Allen Scott style oven, and it started with just me, and then kind of slowly picked up staff, and I lived on the property in the main building, and from there I grew the business. It was really built around providing bread for my community, and so that's kind of been a focus through all these 21 years. And we're still really dedicated. We still have a wood-fired oven. We kind of switched up styles of oven, but we still do wood-fired breads. We're really dedicated to the quality of our products, and now we have a retail on the property. Nobody lives here anymore, so we have a beautiful shop, beautiful space, and it's a really enjoyable place to work, and I'm ready to turn it over.
Yay, to hand over the torch. And she'll offer training. She's not going to teach you how to be a baker, but she'll teach you how to run Brickmaiden Breads. So we're going to actually take a tour. First stop, let's go to the retail center.
Great.
Okay, we're just going to follow behind Celine on this beautiful rainy
So yes, on a beautiful rainy day, coming in, this is our main, it's an old farmhouse that was built in the early 1900s, and we renovated it. So we're coming into the door of the retail. Currently, our customers actually go to the windows around the corner, but we're going to see the main retail space as it, once served people.
Pre-COVID.
Pre-COVID. So this is the retail, and when we have customers inside, we set up our beautiful display here at the windows and all the breads up on the shelves at the back. We have a full service espresso bar, and we like to highlight artisan coffee makers. It's a delicious coffee, and so we have all sorts of cookie assortments. We have fruit cake, we have scone mixes, And then we do a whole line of fresh products for the holidays as well.
So let's take a minute. This is the holiday offering for the fans of Brickmaiden. Where can people purchase this besides here in the retail center?
Actually, most of our baked goods outside of bread, we wholesale our bread. So our bread's available in different West Marin retailers such as the Palace Market, IP Market, Beach Market, as well as some restaurants. But we also sell it mainly at our retail here. And then our package line of products, actually, we don't wholesale because they're expensive to make. Mm-hmm. So those are unique to here. So a lot of people will come here and special order them.
Are any of the farmers markets operating right now?
And we do farmers markets. Yes, we sell them all at our farmers markets. So wherever we retail, wherever Brickmaiden retails, you can get.
If we're back on.
There we go.
We had a momentary crash of the Wi-Fi, but we're back. Okay, show us the.
So these are our bandanas that are available, and then we also got these lovely sweatshirts in, and we have pullovers and zips, and we love them. Once you put them on, you absolutely don't want to take them off. So so we're very excited for that.
So as you can tell, this has been repurposed for production, and nobody comes in here during COVID, but usually this is bustling and gorgeous.
Wood. This is almond wood that we fire our oven with, and it is a sustainable source of wood as the almond groves are pulled down regularly and replanted.
Actually, can we pause there for a second?
Yes.
So one thing to know, besides being as equal to being an artisan bakery, it's a sustainable business. And that term gets thrown around a lot, but Celine was actually an early operator in the area of owning and operating a sustainable business. She operates with a triple bottom line. You'll hear it stated a lot of different ways, but basically always taking in consideration people, planet, profit. So equitable things are sourced sustainably, ethically sourced. The staff is paid a living wage. So triple bottom line. She's always considering three things in the management of her business.
So we're gonna go inside.
Hi.
This space has an entirely different feel than the main retail. It's a kind of a quieter space, which is nice. So only the bread bakers really come in here. We have a small mill where we mill a lot of grain that we purchase from local farmers, so that we're supporting local economy, local grain economy. So that's something in terms of sustainability. And then it's used in our breads as well, so there's kind of a helpful element to that as well.
Here's the front face of the wood-fired oven. So it was upgraded when she initially started. It was a full-on brick oven. This is to help with production.
Yeah, and so this is built as a standard kind of deck oven. It's hard to see in there right now. It's built as a standard deck oven with tubing that runs throughout that's heated by the fire, and so we regulate the heat by feeding the fire at different rates. And so we'll feed the fire throughout the baking process of the bread. And so we're well known for our bread. That's basically what's established us as a business, and then all the other product line has kind of just added to that, and we have a really strong, I think, brand and reputation.
Absolutely. Okay, let's go out to the very special garden.
Do you want me to lead you up?
Yes.
Okay. So this garden was put in with the idea of being an mainly edible garden. And so we actually planted last spring, and we have different boxes with vegetables and such, but really we use a lot of the flowers, and there's a lot of mint growing around here, just really herbs. It's just really a fragrant, beautiful garden that is rife with bees and pollinators when it's not raining out.
Hummingbirds,
Yes.
butterflies, it's magical.
It is, and so people come out here and can just enjoy sitting out here with a cup of coffee.
Pastry and a nice espresso.
And just spend some quiet time. We have a couple hammock chairs that we hang up over there, so it's really just a nice ambient space to be in on a sunny day.
Well, thank you so much for hosting us today.
Absolutely.
Celine has to go pick up her daughter from school. It's an early release day today, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know, my daughter too. So if you're interested in Brickmaiden Breads as a customer, They don't have a sign out front. The address is
44th Street.
44th Street. You have to ask the locals, where's Brickmaiden Breads? You go up front, you get an incredible pastry and espresso drink, and then you can come out here. If it's raining like today, you can sit under the gazebo. Today, they're actually not open. Today's a production day. But if you're interested in purchasing the business and the real property, they're being sold together, you can contact me directly through my website or some other way. But in the meantime, thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you guys.
I'll be in touch. Okay, Ed and I are going to move over here and talk about the topic for today. Okay, so today's topic is, I'm going to take off my mask, restaurant commercial leases. When is rents 1.0 rents, and when are they too high? So I'm going to use the term right now. Everything I say, I'm actually going to use the term occupancy cost. I'm not going to use the term rent. But when I say occupancy cost, think rent, and I'll explain what that means. I can't scroll up because my pad is wet. So you have to bear with me today because I'm so busy. Restaurant brokerage is so flippin' busy right now. I'm just grateful that we're here streaming live to you today. So if I have to refer to my notes or I make a bunch of mistakes, please just throw a lot of love at me. Oh, let's talk a little bit about me. No, let's skip me. If you want to know anything about me, check out my website. You can reach me through there. I will say this series, if you have a friend that you or a colleague that you think would benefit from this series, and they're not on Facebook, this series also lives on my website, and I have a YouTube channel. And if you want to show any gratitude towards me, hop on that YouTube channel and subscribe. There's a shameless plug for Ren Long Made Restaurant Sales and Consulting. So how much rent is too much? The short and very generalized answer to that question is, if your occupancy costs, think rent, if your occupancy costs are at 8% or 9% of your gross sales, then you're getting close to the rent being too much. That's how you figure out whether or not, that's a very generalized statement, and I'm going to spend the rest of the series today unpacking that statement. But if you're paying over 8 or 9% of your gross sales in occupancy costs, you're paying too much rent. What does that mean? So when I work with clients with restaurant leasing, which is basically all my clients, some clients will come to me directly for maybe some lease consulting with an established lease. Most of the clients I work with are in the business transfer, and when the business transfers, there's an existing lease that the seller has that's generally assigned to the buyer. Sometimes the landlord will terminate that lease and issue a new lease to the buyer, but most of the time it's assigned. And then the third way that I work with clients on leases is, it might be the operator is just starting out, it's a startup concept in a new premises, and they're negotiating the lease for the first time. That client for me is gold, because we can negotiate favorable lease terms. Sometimes lease terms have been established that might be a little rough to be able to operate to execute a successful restaurant, because the occupancy costs might weigh it down too much. So the way that my clients immediately know whether or not occupancy costs are too high is they can't achieve profitability. Now, there are three major reasons why operators cannot have trouble achieving profitability in the restaurant space. And one of them is the cost of goods sold might be too high. So let's say you see a successful restaurant, like that restaurant's clearly successful. They get great reviews, they're always busy, and yet internally the owner knows, I'm struggling, I'm not making any money, I'm working too much, and I'm not making any money. To my operators out there, does that sound familiar? So one of three things might be happening. Cost of goods sold is too high, labor is too high, or the occupancy costs, the terms of the lease, are too high. And I want to say something right now. My friends and colleagues that are operating under COVID and under the current conditions of working in operating restaurants in California, it's tough. Inputs are expensive, labor costs are high, and then our when we can operate is super erratic, because has been super erratic because of the pandemic. So please don't throw something at me while I'm talking. I'm talking about under normal conditions. I'm going to talk like I'm an economist now. All things being equal. So let's say things were actually, more normalized. That's what I'm talking about today. So the two of those costs, cost of goods sold and labor, those two costs are variable costs, and some operators can do something about those. What I mean by variable costs is they're tied to gross sales. If gross sales go up, cost of goods sold and labor go up. Gross sales go down, typically cost of goods sold and labor go down. However, sometimes, especially as an operator, we walk on site and there's nobody there, but we have a full staff. It's like, go home. So sometimes, it's those expense categories are a tiny bit fixed, because you always have to have somebody on site operating the restaurant, even if it's not full. But for the most part, the cost of goods sold and labor, they're variable costs that move with the gross sales. Occupancy costs, however, fixed. You could close down for a month and you're still paying that rent, right? We know that. However, and I guess I'll say this now, we're bookmarking my series today. I don't know if you remember this, Ed, but I initiated this series on the topic of leases, and in January of this year. And the reason I was talking about leases is because it was a very, very unique occasion for operators where the lease could be negotiated after it was in place. That never happens. So I was super excited about that, because landlords were renegotiating lease terms with tenants, and I brought in my friend and colleague Howard Klein to speak as a guest speaker. I was really urging you guys that have restaurant leases to get it in writing, have it looking towards the future, have it projecting out maybe a couple of years, because there is going to be some bounce back. And thank goodness for all this funding and support that restaurants have been given to be able to weather this storm to some extent. And now we're ending it today with lease terms. But again, once a lease is in place, you're pretty much tethered to it. And if those fixed costs, if those occupancy costs are too high, a restaurant operator will never get around it. So why am I using the term occupancy costs and not rent? This is a huge distinction. The reason I said rent in the title is because everybody knows what rent means. If I said, when are occupancy costs too high, people would be like, wait, what? But if I say rent, and I never actually use the term rent when I'm in my day-to-day work, and when I'm dealing with clients who are looking at their leases, and that's because rent is the most meaningful expense is the occupancy cost. And what that means is the components that go into occupancy costs is a rent, and then common area maintenance, other expenses that are incurred by the tenant that are on the lease, other expenses that are on the lease besides rent. That can be CAM or triple net. CAM fees, it stands for common area maintenance, and that means those are costs the landlord incurs as the owner of that property. So the parking lot, the landscaping, not on site like this. Celine takes care, well, she's the landlord here too, but like if you were in a center with multi-units, other retail operators, the landlord's paying for that common area where there's parking, there's lighting, there's landscaping. That pays for the landscapers, it pays for the management fees the landlord is using to manage that property. Those are common area. That's CAM, which is shortened to CAM. Triple net fees, those are, they're called three nets, and it's the three costs that the landlord incurs. Property tax, so as the property owner, the landlord's paying property tax. That, with a triple net lease, that expense is passed on to the tenants. Property tax, insurance, the insurance the landlord has to pay that's above and beyond what the tenants are paying. And then again, the common area maintenance. So those three fees make up triple net. So base rent plus common area maintenance, occupancy costs. Base rent plus triple net, occupancy costs. So a lease that charges triple net, in addition to the base rent, those are called net leases. Or even if they just charge CAM, that would be a net lease. A lease that only charges base rent and no other fees or expenses listed on the lease, that would be a gross lease. There's one more common lease in restaurants, and it's a percentage lease, which I'll talk about in another episode. We could dedicate a whole episode to that. So if you most of my clients, almost all of my clients, have triple net leases, and what you're going to find is that I'll talk about that. So the occupancy costs, so that's what I was saying, the base rent plus these extra fees together, those should equal on a monthly basis and an annual basis no more than 8% of all the expenses, 8% of the gross sales. So back in the day in our industry, it used to be that those margins were like, the occupancy cost margin was between 6 and 8% forever. Forever it was it's between 6 and 8%. But I can tell you, in the San Francisco Bay Area, that's long gone. If we're looking at between 7 and 9%, we're doing well. So let me talk about that occupancy cost. So different restaurant concepts can endure different occupancy costs. So if we look at it on a spectrum of concepts, so let's say at this spectrum is fast food, and over here is fine dining, and then there's everything in between. There's casual, fast casual, full service casual, all these different concepts. On the low end and on the high end, you might be surprised, you might actually see 10% occupancy costs. So fast food, why would they be paying such high occupancy costs? Because they're in a 5-star location. They're in a highly trafficked location, lots of visibility, easy in and out. 10%, they're doing high volume, so they can support that 10% occupancy cost. On the other end, fine dining, they're in a Class A building. They're in a building that's gorgeous. It's been well maintained. The rent's super high. Well, they can support the high occupancy costs differently. This is high volume, high occupancy costs, low volume, but high guest check average, right? It's super expensive to dine here, but they can support the 10%. Then everything in between, if we come into 9%, I have to say, I get a little nervous if one of my clients has a 9% lease because it's just eating into their profit. 8% in the middle here, I'm more comfortable with. So what I'm going to be talking about today, I'm going to be talking about kind of the middle, and we'll say that's a full service, casual dining, single unit restaurant. That's your favorite local restaurant. That's kind of what I'm thinking when I'm saying restaurant today, that's what I'm referring to. So when I work with my clients, the different types that I said, somebody looking at their lease, somebody who has a lease to assign, and then somebody who's getting a new lease for the first time, I almost always build a spreadsheet. And on that spreadsheet, I gather this information either from the client or off the lease, the square footage, and I'm going to talk about square footage in a little bit, the base rent, the triple net or CAM fees, and I put those into a spreadsheet. So there's like one column's going to have base rent, monthly triple net fees, annual base rent, annual triple net fees, and then I'm going to figure out what are the occupancy costs for this concept. I told you I'm using full service casual restaurant, independently operated single unit. 8% occupancy cost seems fine to me. If they were operating in a building that was run down in a bad location, maybe it would be 7%. If they were operating on the Healdsburg Square, which for those of you who don't live in Sonoma County, or the Healdsburg Plaza, that's a very sought after real estate up there. It's a lot of tourists, a lot of locals, a couple wine appellations intersect there. It's kind of the crown jewel of retail in our county. You might be paying 10% as a restaurant on that plaza. So I figure out what I think those occupancy costs are, and then voila. I'm going to pause for a second. I'm going to take a quick break. If you're just joining us, this is episode 14 of Deep Dish Live. It's a Facebook Live series. It originates on Facebook, and we stream monthly. Today I'm talking about restaurant leases, how much 1.0, because I'm going to talk about leases the next couple episodes. how much rent is too much rent. We're live streaming from Brickmaiden Breads in the beautiful Point Reyes Station in Marin County, California. I forgot to say, every time we meet, I do a gift card giveaway. So today, if you'd like to win a $100 gift card to Brickmaiden Breads, be sure and like and post a comment on this episode. You can do it now while we're streaming live, or anytime between now and January 12th, where we'll be live streaming from Honeymoon Yogurt in downtown Sebastopol. I'll also be announcing the winner of 3 Leaves Foods, which was our gracious host last month, and that winner will be announced at the end of the episode. So, drum roll please. Back to my spreadsheet. So my spreadsheet, not only does it have those columns for monthly rent, monthly triple net expenses, annual rent, annual triple net, it also it has these columns. It also has rows, year 1, year 2, year 3, because every lease, most leases in the base term, they're going to have escalators built in. So annual base rent increases that happen. So generally, sometimes it can be tied to CPI, the Consumer Price Index, but that's a rather cumbersome way to calculate increases. Usually that's saved for when the tenant exercises their option. So base term is over and they're going to go into new term. Usually the rent will be adjusted to Consumer Price Index. So generally in that base term, it's going to be spelled out in the lease that, I'll just say it, 3% annual increases is the most common. So year 1 has this base rent, year 2 will be 3% above that, year 3 will be 3% above year 2, year 4, does that make sense? I'm looking at Ed's face to see if I'm making sense. Year 4 will be 3% above year 3. So now I've got all that in there. I have my spreadsheet all formulated for bang, the last column. The last column is gross sales. And this is where my clients, like, they perk up. Like, I've said all this and their eyes are rolling back in their head. Now I see year 1 to support this base rent plus triple net. So the occupancy costs in year 1, you need to make, let's say, $900,000 in gross sales. Now my client's like, okay, $900,000. I can do that in my sleep. I'm fine. But let's say I get to that last column and it says $1.8 million in gross sales. And my client, trust me, I certainly have clients who are like, I can do that in my sleep. But most of my clients would be like, I can't support that. It's super important for my clients to know whether or not they can support that rent. So if that's an existing lease, those occupancy costs are there. They're not to be renegotiated. There's no incentive for a landlord to renegotiate a lease between a buyer when a buyer takes over a restaurant from a seller, unless that seller has been in distress and is in arrear on rent. But even then, it's very, very rare that a landlord will renegotiate a lease, an assigned lease. It happens, but rare. Typically, they might, and this is rare too, terminate the existing lease, write a new lease for the buyer, but also very rare. The time to negotiate these favorable lease terms, again, is at the very beginning, when you're the first operator on this premises under your concept and you're negotiating the lease for the first time. That's the time to really take time, work with a professional who understands this, and make sure you're able to secure favorable lease terms. Okay, I want to talk about triple net increases. So I talked about how the base rent can increase. Triple nets can increase too. They can be super stable. So if you're coming into a location that's been owned by the landlord for a very long time, your triple net costs might be inexpensive. It's all over the map. Okay, Ed, you ready?
Yeah.
I currently have 2 leases that I'm working on that are in front of me on behalf of my clients. One lease, the triple net costs are 18 cents per square foot. The other one, $1.25 per square foot. What's the difference? Almost always the difference is landlord who's had the property for a very long time, 1.25 triple net, that's a landlord who's probably bought that property recently. So what happens in California is if you've owned that property for a long time, you're not paying high property taxes. Those property taxes reset when the building is sold, right? So if it's a new operator, the property taxes have gone up substantially. Oftentimes the landlord of the new owner of a landlord will do improvements to the building. Those improvements are usually passed on to the tenants. So if you're in a multi-tenant building, so your landlord has multiple tenants in the building in which you operate, you are going to pay, actually, well, I'll go into it. You're going to pay your pro rata share of the triple nets. What that means is a fancy term for saying, let's say I have a restaurant in a center, in a little small commercial center, and I take up 30% of that center. I'm going to pay 30% of the triple net fees. This is a great segue. So wait, so sometimes what my clients will try to do is put a cap on the triple net fees. So triple net fees they're just inherently going to rise. If the landlord of if the landlord is stable, has no plans to move, isn't doing a lot of improvements, the triple nets aren't going to change that much over year. But again, if it sells, they're going to, who knows, they'll go from 18 cents a square foot to 125 a square foot. And my clients will try to put a cap on there. It's very rare that a landlord will accept a clause that puts a cap on the triple net. And the reason why is there's multiple reasons, but one of the main reasons is that landlord does want to sell the real property. That lease is a very unattractive lease to the next landlord. So the landlords, the way that landlords make money is through those leases, the cash flow they get from those leases, right? So if there's a cap on triple net, if the landlord isn't able to prorate their expenses accurately to the tenant, then they're paying then that's an expense, an added expense to the landlord. So a lease that has a cap on triple nets is a very unattractive lease to a potential buyer. So landlords are very unlikely to accept a cap on triple nets. There's other reasons too, but those are the biggest. So I'm going to talk about square footage and then we'll close up for today. On leases, some leases, commercial leases, you won't even see square footage listed, period, at all. On many leases, you'll see it listed and there's always a qualifier. It'll either say approximate or it'll have a line that says for reference use only. And the reason why is, let's say, there's many reasons, but let's say the landlord is in the business of being a landlord, has owned that building for 20 or 30 years, hasn't even set foot on it in 20, 30, that space could have been demised. Maybe it was never measured out properly to begin with. So it's only for reference purposes. And even then, let's say you have been operating on this premise forever, you've calculated what the price per square foot is, which we haven't even talked about, right? Because most of my clients want to talk, is it, $1.85, unheard of, a square foot commercial real estate? Is it $2.50 a square foot? Those are somewhat meaningless terms, because what does it matter if they all add up to occupancy costs that you can't afford? So the only time that I think square footage really matters is in the triple net fees, right? Let's see, does it matter? Because that's on a pro rata share. But in any event, there's always another clause in the commercial lease that says, in the event that it's found that the square footage that's listed on the lease isn't accurate, the rents prevail. In other words, it can't be renegotiated based on some finding that the square footage of the space has changed. So if you're a new operator going into a space, you might want to do a kind of a quick and dirty measurement of the space, and if it looks substantially less than what the landlord is telling you that it is, you might want to get a professional in to measure the space. So this is a very hot topic. How a space is measured, right? So let's say there's a square footage listed on the lease, but how was it measured? Was it measured interior wall to interior wall? Was it measured, my architects are going to say that it was measured this way, middle of wall to middle of wall, or exterior wall to exterior wall? There's many different ways that premises could be measured. So typically landlords put it in the lease. We don't want to start quibbling about the square footage. But if you have a lease that has triple nets and it's being sold, and you're going to pay your pro rata share of those triple nets, and you have a big square footage, your triple nets are going to go up pretty high. So I think that's pretty much the discussion that I wanted to have on rents, otherwise known that we don't say rents, right? We say occupancy costs. Occupancy costs and why they're so important for the profitability and success of restaurant operators. And actually, I'll say this is how important it is to me. I often do pro formas. Pro formas are profit loss statements that are projecting into the future. Like if you're going to do a startup in year one, this is the gross sales I think I'm going to make. Here are my expenses I think I'm going to have. Here's my projected profit. I would build that whole pro forma. I would plug in the rent and the triple net. I'd plug in occupancy costs. It's going to be annual. I'd put whatever occupancy cost percentage margin I think is accurate, say 8%. That's going to populate the gross sales, and then I would build my pro forma from that. That's how important I think occupancy costs are, and I actually do that. So, let me announce the winner of the 3 Leases Food gift certificate. It was Nancy Wister. Nancy, I'll be reaching out to you on Facebook to get your email address or your mailing address, and I'll send that to you. If you guys want to win the $100 gift card to Brickmaiden Breads, our beautiful host today, like and post a comment on this episode either now or anytime that it's going to live on its various social media platforms between now and January 12th, where I'll live stream from Honeymoon Yogurt in downtown Sebastopol. Again, my name is Ren Longmaid. I'm a restaurant consultant and broker. I operate out of Santa Rosa, and thank you so much for joining me today, and have a happy holiday.